It's not a secret that Andrew Cuomo has done a particularly bad job dealing with the coronavirus in New York City. It's not entirely his fault. It is a big, big city. It's very dense, and so it's very easy for the virus to spread. And China was lying, but still, they've had a lot of time to deal with this. Andrew Cuomo tried stopping the lockdown very early on. It's gotten bad, but for some reason, his approval rating is still really good. Well, I can only imagine at some point soon, it will start dropping. Maybe not soon, maybe the next year or whatever. But I'll tell you what, New York is done for. You got to understand how bad this really is. Nearly 420,000 of New York City's richest residents have fled the city amid the pandemic, with smartphone data showing Upper East Side and West Village populations down by 40%. You want to know why this is so bad? You see, it was not that long ago, just last year, Andrew Cuomo announced a $2.3 billion revenue shortfall. God forbid if the rich leave. You see, they said, Mr. Cuomo, why don't you just raise the taxes on the wealthy? And there was a concern that by doing so, they would just leave the city and the state. Now they are. How will Cuomo make up for this deficit? Well, as you know, they are begging for the federal government to bail them out, but the federal government may not actually do it. This budget shortfall happened way before coronavirus. They were mismanaging the state, and you can thank people like Ocasio-Cortez. The system is broken. Ocasio-Cortez exploited the system to get elected. She got like 17,000 votes in a district of 750,000. She chased out Amazon, crushing 25 to 40,000 jobs, gloated about it. The system is broken. And because of this, because of other things like this, they can't make up the money. The coronavirus hits. Now they're going to dump more money they don't have. Now they're facing a massive budget deficit, and the rich are fleeing, and that's where they make their money. Now, the story says they're fleeing the city, the Upper East and the Upper West Side. The Upper East Side, Soho, and the West Village emptied at least 40%. New York City has a city income tax. It's like, I think like 3% or something. It's really high. When you combine the city, state, and federal, man, living in New York City is one of the most expensive states to live in tax-wise. A lot of these people fled to upstate, but a lot of them fled to Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, surrounding states, taking all of that money with them. The economy being shut down is going to hurt them in so many more ways. Not only are people leaving, but many of them may not actually come back. This means that what Andrew Cuomo feared is coming to fruition. Their $2.3 billion revenue shortfall last year, guess what? God forbid if the rich leave, well, they've left. And when you reopen, if you do, it will be too little too late. New York it's hanging itself. Cuomo extends New York stay-at-home order until June 13th. Well, I don't know what to tell you, man. I don't know what he can or should do. This is why I would never want to be in politics. But dude, he knew what would come from this. And now it's here. So whether or not it's Cuomo's fault, I'm not going to play that game. I will say the horrible taxes, the mismanagement, and everything outside of coronavirus set the stage for all of this to happen. They had been, due to poor management of their city and their state, they had been filling the powder keg. The coronavirus was simply the spark. And now we're going to see just how bad it really gets in the coming months. Let's read the story. Daily Mail says 5% of New York City's population has fled. While there was relatively little change in some zip codes, others such as Soho, the West Village, Morningside Heights, the Upper East Side, the Financial District, Midtown, Gramercy, and Brooklyn Heights emptied by at least 40%. Meanwhile, Manhattan's overall population had fallen by almost 20% as the lockdown enters its third month. Income was perhaps the strongest indicator of how many residents in a particular neighborhood had fled. New York City has been the epicenter of the outbreak, with more than 186,000 cases, 15,300 deaths, 5,000 probable deaths. Percent of NYC residents who stayed home by income group. Look at this, the top 1%. They're the lowest. Wow. Here we can see where NYC coronavirus refugees are fleeing: Cape Cod, Rhode Island, the Hamptons, Jersey Shore, South Florida, Martha's Vineyard. Surprise, surprise, the rich people got the cash to get out of Dodge. Many of them run companies that can operate in other places. Many of them probably work from home or work wherever they see fit. And now that revenue is leaving. Cuomo is keeping the place locked down until June 13th, another month. Many of these people just won't come back. Why? You're setting up roots in other places. You were forced to move. That money won't come back either. The Daily Mail says, for its report, the Times looked at data provided by New Mexico-based Descartes Labs, a geospatial imagery analytics company. The company used anonymous smartphones' geolocation data to track where New York City residents were in February and whether they left the city or not after the pandemic. The same population was 140,000 people from nearly every census-counted neighborhood in the 5 boroughs. While smartphone data is not yet perfect, and not every resident owns a smartphone, it provides a general idea about New Yorkers' mobility. Between March 1st and March 15th, there was a small trickle out of New York. But after Mayor Bill de Blasio announced the city's schools would be shut, there was a mass exodus. The Times found that residents from neighborhoods where the median income is $90,000 or less stayed in their homes. About 10% of those in the top 10th percentile fled, and about 25% in the top 5 percentile did the same. However, more than 1/3, 35% of the top 1% escaped to summer homes in Long Island, upstate New York, or other states. According to CNBC, the top 1% of New York City earns about $2.2 million per year on average, and the top 5% annual income is about $480,000. The data is consistent with other reports of wealthy New York City residents having fled. People that live in vacation towns, such as the Hamptons in Long Island and the Catskills in upstate, complained that their grocery stores were being emptied by city people who were living in their summer homes. Last month, officials said the price of rental homes in the Hamptons soared from $5,000 per month to more than $30,000 for a 2-week period. Now that's what I call demand. Small town populations practically doubled as Big Apple residents fled to their summer homes. But locals said city dwellers were bringing COVID-19, the disease caused by the virus with them. Yes. And the New York Times confirms the wealthy individuals in New York City fled, took their tax dollars with them, and then infected a bunch of other places. That's how things work, huh? They go on to mention a bunch of other places. They say overall Descartes Labs found that New York City's total population decreased by 5.2% and Manhattan's by 18.6%. The Times found these numbers to be consistent with 2 other papers it looked at, one from NYU and another company from Tealytics that looks at cell phone tower data. So what does this reveal about who is and isn't leaving the city? The residents of these wealthy neighborhoods where more than 25% fled are overwhelmingly white, about 68%, according to the newspaper. However, this is not representative of New York City's population because less than half of the city's 42.7% is white, according to U.S. Census data. I mostly don't care about this. They say more than 3/4 of these neighborhoods have residents with college degrees and rents of more than $2,000 per month. What I do care about, Andrew Cuomo extends this, and then we can go back to 2019 and see what this means for the future of New York City. This is it. These blue havens, the big cities are where the epicenters are. It's the Democrat-controlled states where they're shutting things down, and people are going to flee. Here's the theory I've had for a while since this started. Now, of course, the one thing we can say, that budget shortfall, if they don't get bailed out, it's going to be really bad. It's going to be worse than we've ever seen. Andrew Cuomo was pleading for people not to leave. Now they're leaving. But I think what will happen is there's two possibilities I see that are two potentials. I don't know what percentage I would give them in terms of probability. As all of these Democrat voter individuals flee these cities that are becoming infected, they go to more rural areas, which are more likely to be Republican. I do not believe, because of the concentration, we're not going to see all of these people in New York go to one county. They're going to spread out, likely diluting the voter base, making the congressional counties in these big cities small, less. There'll be less of them, right? They'll actually get bigger space-wise because there's less people in New York. Think about it. 20% of people in Manhattan. How many people are on Manhattan Island? Like 2.5 million. So we're talking about almost 500,000 people, maybe 400,000. That's going to dramatically reduce the amount of congressional districts the city will have and their voting power in the Electoral College. These people will spread out in various directions. They'll enter mostly red districts and not likely overpower the Republicans or outvote them, thus resulting in Republicans getting a big advantage after the next census. Census is currently going on in New York City and people are fleeing. What's going to happen in the next election cycle when they get rid of, they're going to erase some of these congressional districts. New York, California, Washington, these epicenters, it's going to get bad. You've got people like Joe Rogan saying he's going to leave LA. You got people like Elon Musk saying they will move to Texas or Nevada. What happens when all these people leave? This could change the demographic makeup of many states. Some blue states could turn red states could turn blue. But ultimately, what I think we will see is a depowering of major urban centers. This freaked people out. Even if we get through this unscathed, I mean, we're not going to, but even if we pull through this relatively soon, a lot of people are going to be scared about what could possibly happen. They'll be traumatized. Even though it's not the worst thing in the world, a lot of people will start to say, either I've already moved, I've got roots in a new place, I'll stay here. They might say, wow, we really do need to buy firearms like they tried to do at many of these gun shops. Or they'll just say, I don't want to be in a big city. It's too risky if things hit the fan. So what happens? The mostly rural areas and suburban areas that are getting an influx, some of them may flip because there's swing districts like CA25. But considering Donald Trump's popularity, considering the culture war, I think what we're going to see is a mass dilution of this voter base. And they will be overtaken. They will be entering strong red areas where they won't have that same voting power anymore. And what does this mean? Donald Trump landslide, Republican 2024 landslide. I don't see the Democrats winning unless they change their message and become more moderate. We'll see how it plays out. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.